Penny Wong was grilled in the Senate today about why she rejected the recommendation of Australian diplomats at the United Nations and instead supported the one-sided motion recognising Palestinian sovereignty. This was my exclusive story last night. I revealed that Wong went against a recommendation made by Australia's mission to the United Nations, which suggested that we abstain from this resolution. Well, here was Penny Wong being pressed on this today.
Did DFAT or Australia's UN mission recommend that Australia maintain a position of abstain on the UN resolution regarding permanent sovereignty of the Palestinian people? Why did you overturn their recommendation?
The vote is consistent with the priority the Albanese government places on building momentum towards a two-state solution. The vote in favour of this resolution by Australia was alongside more than 155 members of the international community, including the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Japan and New Zealand.
Order.
Yep, she couldn't really answer the question on why she did not follow the recommendation of our diplomats. Well, to discuss this and more, I'm joined now by the Director of Counter-Terrorism and Intelligence Program at the Washington Institute and former FBI analyst, Matthew Levitt. Matthew, thank you very much for joining me. Look, what's your view on Australia supporting this resolution that was described by American officials as one-sided and not conducive to the peace process?
Look, as a former U.S. government official, I'm sensitive to the fact that you want to follow the advice of your experts that you pay good money to work on these issues. So it's telling if your UN staff, if your staff at DFAT is giving you certain advice. I understand the desire of people who want to try and find a way to move forward from the past year plus of trauma on both the Israeli and Palestinian sides. I just am not sure that pressing for recognition of a Palestinian state in the moment does it, because it just comes out of a parallel universe. There's no one to lead that Palestinian state, not Hamas, which is still fighting in Gaza, not Mahmoud Abbas, which barely controls a government in Ramallah. What we need to do is to find ways to isolate Hamas, create something in Gaza that does not include Hamas, get that local Palestinian self-rule, establish security for Israel. I am not giving up on the idea of a two-state solution. I just recognize that's a 20-year prospect at this point. And failure to recognize that reality doesn't contribute to stability in the moment. It actually makes it less likely, because the Israelis in particular will look at you and just want to know, what universe are you coming from?
Why are you rewarding Hamas for October 7th? Because nothing's changed since then for Penny Wong to have this position. Now, I want to ask you about, these deplorable scenes that we saw in Sydney overnight, where cars and buildings were vandalised, clearly anti-Semitic attacks. This is an escalation of intimidation. We haven't seen enough leadership in Australia over the past year, like in many global cities. There have been protests outside synagogues. Also, they've been defaced. As a counter-terrorism expert, what do you think needs to happen in Australia right now to avoid scenes like this escalating?
Look, I think it's really important for authorities to see this for what it is. Even if you are against Israel and Israeli policies, this kind of stuff against Israel targeting local Jewish citizens is not opposing Israel. It's opposing these local Jewish citizens. And law enforcement has to take that seriously. Whether it's as a hate crime or something else, there's a role for law enforcement to get involved not only once it happens, but in advance. And community policing isn't only about making the victimized community feel better after it happens. It's about going out and finding where this happened and making sure that the people involved in it understand we're going to be enforcing the law now. I had the opportunity a couple of days ago in Melbourne to speak at the Australia-New Zealand Police Conference on a panel on the impact of October 7th on policing. It wasn't unique to Australia or New Zealand. This is true in the United States or elsewhere. And this was part of my message to them. They have an opportunity to be part of the solution, but we have to enforce laws. We have to make it clear to communities what those laws are.
Yeah.
Something like this cannot go without a real serious response.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there. And there have not been anywhere near enough arrests, barely any related to this sort of behaviour. Just finally, you're quite an expert on Hezbollah. You've written a book on the terrorist group. We've seen reports over the past couple of weeks that there could be some sort of ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah and Lebanon. Doesn't look like that's going to eventuate now, not because of the Israel side of it. Where do you see this headed?
So thank you for mentioning my book. The Australia version comes out in a week and a half. Thank you very much. Look, I think that there will be a ceasefire. Whether it happens right now or not is not yet determined. Hochstein, the U.S. diplomat, was in Lebanon. Now he's in Israel. Hezbollah even weighed in on it. There is a situation where Hezbollah has been so pummeled that they desperately want a ceasefire. This ceasefire will come with a 60-day window to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be trying to enforce UN Security Council Resolution 1701 that ended the last war and was then never enforced. And so while there's no prospect of a better UN Security Council resolution because of the makeup of the Security Council, this time around it has to be enforced. And the Israelis are on top of that, making clear. If the Lebanese armed forces or perhaps the UN contingent there, UNIFIL, fail to prevent Hezbollah from coming in, the Israelis are going to do what they need to do to protect their citizenry, and they're going to prevent Hezbollah from coming back to that border. But there's a real opportunity for a ceasefire, mostly because Israel created that opening by cutting Hezbollah off at the knees.
Taking out the leadership. We need a UN resolution against the UN for failing to enforce 1701 since 2006.
You can count on them to do that.
Yeah. All right, Matthew Levitt, really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.